You are standing in a coastal Florida living room at dusk, and water is crossing the floor like it has a right to enter. The flashlight is in your hand. The beam shakes a little. Not because the flashlight is weak. Because the mind has started its argument. This should not be happening. This house should have held. This room should still be dry. That first impression comes fast. It says the water is not only urgent, but personal. It says the loss is a verdict on your life, your judgment, your safety, your worth. And if you assent to that too quickly, rage will take the office that belongs to reason. Epictetus would not ask you to pretend the water is harmless. He would ask a harder thing. Do not give the flood authority over your ruling faculty. The event is water entering a room. The verdict is what your mind tries to add. Your responsibility is smaller, cleaner, and more severe. Steady the breath, check the beam, protect life, separate what is happening from what you are declaring, and choose the next governable action. The storm owns the weather. You own the assent. The first discipline in that room is not courage. It is accuracy. When the water enters, the mind wants to make one large, burning claim: everything is being taken from me. But that sentence is too large to be useful. It mixes the floor, the furniture, the drywall, the insurance forms, the years of work, the fear of tomorrow, and the anger of this exact moment into one confused judgment. Epictetus would divide it. Not coldly. Not casually. But with the seriousness of a person who knows that confusion makes bad servants and worse commanders. The water is not yours to govern. The weather is not yours to govern. The timing of the flood is not yours to govern. The fact that this is happening at dusk, when light is fading and the house feels less like shelter and more like an exposed place, is not yours to govern. The past choices that brought you to this property, this street, this mortgage, this room, are no longer yours to govern either. They may be yours to review later. They may be yours to learn from. But they are not available for command in this moment. And this is where the untrained mind rebels. It says, if I cannot control the water, then I have no control. That is false. It only feels true because the mind has mistaken size for authority. The flood is large. Your next act is small. But size is not sovereignty. A hurricane can fill a street and still have no power to make you surrender your judgment. Water can cross the living room and still have no right to decide whether you speak with discipline or with rage. Loss can be real and still not become the ruler of the inner court. The flashlight matters because it gives the mind one honest place to return. Check the beam. Not because the beam fixes the storm. Because it reminds you what the ruling faculty does. It attends. It distinguishes. It chooses. It refuses to let the loudest external fact become the master of the soul. A homeowner in that room has duties. This is not philosophy as decoration. The boundary of control does not excuse laziness. It demands conduct. You may need to move toward higher ground inside the house. You may need to account for family members. You may need to protect what can be protected without becoming reckless. You may need to call, document, decide, wait, lift, close, unplug, gather, or leave. Some of those actions may work. Some may not. But the moral weight is not in guaranteed success. The moral weight is in governing what is yours while events do what events do. A person can lose property and still keep command of intention. A person can watch years of effort get soaked through and still refuse to add disgrace to misfortune. A person can feel anger rise and still not hand anger the pen. This is the boundary. Yours, judgment. Yours, assent. Yours, intention. Yours, attention. Yours, the next response. Not yours, the storm path, the rising water, the hour it came, the opinions that may come later, the claims process, the neighbor's choices, the government's timing, the repair crew's schedule, or whether the world recognizes how much this hurt. That last one is important. Part of the rage is not only about the property. It is about witness. The mind wants the world to see the loss at the exact size it feels inside. It wants the storm to confess. It wants the room to apologize. It wants the universe to admit that this was unfair. But externals do not make confessions. Water does not explain itself. Weather does not answer cross-examination. The question is not whether the event is harsh. It is. The question is whether harshness has been granted authority over your faculty of choice. When you say, this should not be happening, you may be stating a preference, a moral protest, a grief, a memory of how the room looked yesterday. But if you turn that sentence into a command against reality, you will suffer twice. Once from the water. Again from your demand that the water be otherwise. Epictetus keeps bringing the mind back to office. What is your office here? Not to approve of the flood. Not to call damage good. Not to pretend you are untouched. Your office is to meet the event without falsifying where power lies. The flashlight beam moves across the floor. It catches the leg of a chair. It catches the line where water meets rug. It catches the bottom shelf where books are already darkening. Each sight invites a verdict. Ruined. Stolen. Insult. Failure. Punishment. But the event has not spoken those words. The mind is speaking them. And because the mind is speaking them, the mind must be examined. That is the opening of freedom. Not freedom from storms. No one has that. Not freedom from loss. No homeowner, no worker, no parent, no citizen, no aging body has that. Freedom begins where the person can say, "This event is outside my command, but my assent is not outside my command." That sentence will not dry the floor. It will not restore the room. It will not make the night easy. But it will prevent the second disaster, letting an external event become an internal government. So stand there with the flashlight. Breathe steadily, not as a trick, but as an act of order. Name what is happening without adding what has not been proven. Water is entering the living room. This is urgent. This requires action. This does not decide my worth. This does not own my judgment. This does not choose my next word. The flood may take wood, fabric, paint, and paper. It may take comfort for a season. It may take money, time, convenience, and sleep. But it does not take the boundary unless you give it away. And that boundary is not sentimental. It is the hard line between being struck by events and being ruled by them. The boundary keeps you from confusing the storm with your soul. But the next battle is faster. It happens before you have a sentence for it. The flashlight beam moves across the room, and the mind receives an impression. Not a conclusion yet. Not wisdom. Not truth. Just an appearance. Water is entering. The floor is changing color. The room is no longer what it was. The sound at the door is not ordinary rain anymore. The mind sees this, and instantly the impression arrives with pressure inside it. It does not merely say, "There is water." It comes dressed as emergency, insult, threat, personal attack, and future ruin. That is why Epictetus was so severe about impressions. He knew the first appearance often arrives like a messenger who has already written the verdict. But a messenger is not a judge. The impression says, "This is urgent." Judgment adds, "This is unbearable." The impression says, "The living room is flooding." Judgment adds, "My life is being taken from me." The impression says, "Property may be lost." Judgment adds, "I am less secure, less respected, less whole." The impression says, "Act now." Judgment adds, "Rage is justified as commander." This is where assent enters. Assent is the moment you say yes to the meaning that has appeared. Sometimes the yes is spoken. More often, it is acted. A slammed door is assent. A reckless movement is assent. A word thrown at someone nearby is assent. Standing frozen while anger argues with reality can also be assent. The mind has accepted the impression not only as a signal, but as a ruler. And once rage becomes ruler, it does not protect the house. It spends attention. It burns judgment. It makes the next action less clean. Blind rage at the loss of property feels powerful because it fills the body. It gives the illusion of strength. It says, "At least I am not passive. At least I care. At least I am answering what happened." But rage is often noise pretending to be responsibility. It is motion without examination. It is the mind trying to punish an event that cannot be punished. Water does not become ashamed because you hate it. The storm does not retreat because you condemn it. The soaked rug does not improve because your inner courtroom grows louder. So the Stoic question is not, "How do I feel nothing?" That is the wrong question. The question is, what have I assented to? Have I assented to the bare event? Or have I assented to the story that this event has final authority over my worth? Have I assented to the need for action? Or have I assented to the belief that anger is action? Have I assented to loss? Or have I assented to humiliation? That distinction is not delicate. It is practical. In a room where water is rising, you cannot afford false judgments. You need the mind to see clearly, because what you do next must serve life, duty, and order. The flashlight is still in your hand. That is not a small detail. The beam is a test. Wherever you point it, the mind tries to attach a judgment. The bottom of the sofa. The family photos. The outlet near the wall. The doorway to the hall. Every object becomes an argument. This is ruined. This is unfair. This is too much. This proves I was not safe. This proves I cannot protect what is mine. But none of those sentences is the event itself. They are additions. Some may contain understandable grief. Some may point to real consequences. But if you do not inspect them, they will pass through the gate as law. Epictetus would tell you to stop them at the gate. Not destroy them. Not deny them. Stop them. Say, you are an impression, not the thing you claim to be. That sentence is discipline. It gives the ruling faculty one moment of space. And in that space, assent becomes possible instead of automatic. The room is flooding. That is the event. This is the end of my stability. That is a judgment. I need to act carefully. That is a useful judgment. Someone must pay for this right now. That may be rage looking for a body. I cannot bear this. That is an unexamined claim. This is difficult, and still my next response belongs to me. That is Stoic correction. The untrained mind wants to merge all of them. It wants one heavy mass called disaster. But the disciplined mind separates. It does not make the event pleasant. It makes the response governable. That is the work. To see the water without crowning it. To feel the pressure without obeying the first verdict. To recognize anger without letting anger choose the next word. To let urgency sharpen conduct instead of corrupting judgment. You may still have to move quickly. Stoicism is not slowness. It is not standing calmly in danger as if calmness were the highest duty. The highest duty is right action from a governed mind. Sometimes right action is fast. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is leaving. Sometimes it is calling for help. Sometimes it is telling someone in the house, clearly and without panic, what must happen next. But in each case, the question remains the same. Who gave the order? Reason, or the first impression? Judgment, or blind rage? The ruling faculty, or the flood wearing the mask of authority? Assent is where the event tries to become your master. It fails when you examine it. Examination is not theory in that living room. It is training under pressure. Ascesis does not begin in a quiet study when the book is open and the weather is far away. It begins when the thing you counted on changes shape in front of you, and the mind is tempted to abandon its post. The water is rising. The light is fading. The flashlight beam is narrow. That is the field of practice. You do not practice by giving a speech to yourself about being above it all. You practice by doing one governed thing after another while the impression keeps asking for permission to become law. First, stand still long enough to see. Not forever. Not passively. Just long enough to prevent the first surge of anger from becoming the first action. The body wants to rush because rushing feels like control. But a rushed mind often steps over what is actually needed. It looks for an enemy instead of a task. It searches for someone to blame when the next duty is much closer. So you pause. You let the breath become steady. You check the flashlight beam. You name the event without decoration. Water is entering the living room. Dusk is falling. The situation requires attention. This is not weakness. This is command beginning again. Then you divide. What is mine here? My judgment. My assent. My intention. My attention. My next response. What is not mine? The rain. The flood line. The hour. The past. The storm track. The fact that this room is no longer dry. This division is not a slogan. It is a tool you use while standing in damage. The mind must be trained to make the cut cleanly, because suffering grows when externals are treated as if they were inner property. You can own the house on paper and still not own the storm. You can have paid the mortgage, repaired the roof, swept the floor, and loved that room for years, and still the weather does not report to you. That is not an insult. It is the structure of reality. Ascesis means consenting to that structure without surrendering your office inside it. The next practice is to refuse the false luxury of rage. Rage will present itself as justice. It will say, if you are not furious, you are accepting this. That is a lie. A man can reject what happened, act against the damage, defend his household, document the loss, seek help, and make firm decisions without making rage his captain. Anger is not proof of seriousness. A clean act is proof of seriousness. A disciplined word is proof of seriousness. A governed step is proof of seriousness. In the flooded room, ascesis may be as plain as keeping your voice steady when someone else is frightened. It may be choosing not to accuse a family member for something no family member caused. It may be moving with care instead of flinging objects around because the mind wants to feel powerful. It may be shining the flashlight on what matters now rather than staring at what cannot be saved. The practice is not to become untouched. The practice is to stop adding disorder to disorder. Epictetus would not measure you by whether the furniture stayed dry. That is not the moral question. He would look at the use you made of the impression. Did you examine it? Did you test it? Did you separate the external from the faculty that judges it? Did you keep responsibility where responsibility belongs? That is where the hurricane becomes useful as an image. Outside, the storm moves with force. Inside, the ruling faculty must find its own center. Not a comfortable center. Not a pleasant one. A disciplined one. The center is the place where you say, "This has happened, and now I must choose according to what is mine." It is the place where the mind stops demanding that the event be reversed before it will behave with dignity. It is the place where action becomes possible without the poison of resentment. You return to the flashlight. The beam is narrow because attention must be narrow now. Not the whole future. Not the total cost. Not every conversation that will follow. Not the memory of how the room looked before. Not the imagined judgment of neighbors, relatives, adjusters, strangers, or anyone else who will never stand in this exact dusk. This beam. This step. This decision. This word. That is ascesis. A practiced mind does not become a stone. It becomes a gatekeeper. It lets in the truth and refuses the verdicts that do not belong to the truth. Truth, water is in the room. False verdict, therefore my life is ruined. Truth, property may be lost. False verdict, therefore I have been reduced. Truth, I am angry. False verdict, therefore anger should decide. Truth, I do not control the outcome. False verdict, therefore nothing I do matters. Your practice is to catch each verdict at the door and ask whether it has the right to enter. Most of them do not. So you act from what remains. You protect life. You preserve what can be preserved without becoming reckless. You speak clearly. You attend to the people near you. You take the next rational step. And when the mind returns to the old protest, as it will, you do not argue with it for an hour. You bring it back to the beam. Again. 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 Ascesis is repetition under weather. It is the refusal to let one hard event train you downward. Conduct begins where protest stops pretending to be work. In the flooded room, the mind may want one more argument with reality before it moves. It may want to stand there, flashlight in hand, rehearsing every reason this should not have happened. It may want to condemn the storm, the city, the builder, the insurance company, the forecast, the past decision to buy near the coast, or the fact that dusk makes everything harder. But duty does not wait for the mind to feel satisfied. Duty asks a plainer question. What is required of you now? Not what would you prefer. Not what do you resent. Not what would make this scene feel fair. What is required? A Stoic does not use the boundary of control to shrink responsibility. He uses it to locate responsibility. The fact that the water is not yours to govern does not mean you have nothing to do. It means your work must be directed toward the part where choice still exists. That is why conduct matters. You do not control whether the living room floods, but you control whether you speak to the people in the house as if they are enemies. You do not control the rising water, but you control whether you move with attention or with blind force. You do not control the damage already done, but you control whether the next 5 minutes are governed by reason or by the anger that wants to make a spectacle of itself. Responsibility is not the same as blame. This distinction must be held firmly. Blame looks backward and demands a target. Responsibility looks at the present and accepts an office. Blame says, who can I accuse for the fact that I am suffering? Responsibility says, what belongs to me now that this has happened? In that room, your office may be simple and severe. Check where the water is coming in. Keep the flashlight steady enough to see. Speak clearly to anyone nearby. Move what can be moved without risking life or safety. Protect documents, medicine, phones, keys, or whatever is needed for the next stage. Decide whether the house is still safe. Do not confuse saving objects with protecting people. Do not let property make you reckless. That last duty is hard for the homeowner because property is not just material. A house contains labor. It contains memory. It contains years of postponed purchases, hard payments, repaired corners, family routines, quiet mornings, and private hopes. When water crosses the floor, it feels as if the storm has entered the record of your life. Still, the Stoic order remains. People above possessions. Character above property. Judgment above rage. Duty above the demand to feel vindicated. If someone in the house is afraid, your anger is not neutral. It becomes part of their weather. If your voice turns harsh, if your movements become careless, if you make the room revolve around your outrage, then the storm has gained an assistant. You cannot stop the flood by losing command of yourself. You can only add disorder to danger. Conduct is the refusal to assist misfortune. This does not mean politeness without strength. It does not mean pretending that damage is minor. It means using strength where strength is useful. A firm command may be needed. A quick decision may be needed. A direct instruction may be needed. But firmness does not require contempt. Urgency does not require panic. Authority does not require rage. A governed person can say, "Get the bags. Stay away from that outlet. Bring the phone. We are leaving now," without turning those words into punishment. That is responsibility under pressure. It also means accepting the unpleasant work that follows. When the immediate danger passes, there may be calls, photographs, forms, repairs, delays, estimates, waiting, and conversations with people who do not understand the size of the loss. The mind will be tempted again. It will say, "Because this is unfair, I have permission to become careless with my character." No. Unfairness does not suspend your office. Difficulty does not cancel duty. The event may be harsh, but harshness does not authorize corruption of judgment. Epictetus keeps bringing the person back to the same court, not the court of public opinion, not the court of property value, not the court of weather, but the court inside the ruling faculty. What did you do with what appeared? What did you choose when the impression pressed hard? What did you protect when externals shook? What kind of person stood in the room with a flashlight? That question is not asked to shame you. It is asked to restore precision. Because in any hard event, there are two records being made. One is external, what was damaged, what was lost, what must be repaired. The other is internal, what was chosen, what was restrained, what was honored, what was surrendered. The first record may be ugly through no fault of yours. The second still asks for your signature. So let conduct become simple. Do not worship the house. Do not despise the house. Use what can be used. Release what must be released. Protect those entrusted to you. Tell the truth about the damage. Refuse the lie that rage is proof of love. Return again to the flashlight, to the next action, to the line between event and judgment. Responsibility is not controlling the storm. Responsibility is not letting the storm control the person who must act within it. Freedom is not the water stopping at the doorway. Freedom is not the house staying untouched. Freedom is not the storm giving you a reason you can accept. Freedom is the ruling faculty remaining its own possession when the room is no longer under your command. That is a severe kind of freedom, but it is the only kind that survives contact with events. Anything else depends on weather, timing, property, money, other people, and chance. Those things may be preferred. They may be worth protecting. But they cannot be allowed to become the judge of the soul. So when the flashlight beam crosses the flooded floor one last time, let it show the truth plainly. There is damage. There is work ahead. There may be loss that cannot be recovered. But there is also a line that the flood cannot cross unless you carry it across yourself. The event can enter the living room. The judgment enters by assent. This is why Epictetus matters when life is not calm. He does not offer escape from externals. He gives you the discipline to meet them without surrendering what is yours to govern. So do the next thing. Protect life. Speak with order. Choose the next rational action. Let anger knock, but do not make it captain. The storm may decide what happens to the floor. It does not decide what happens to your character. The event is not the verdict.